90.3 WHPC now presents Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now, learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property, and learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau, a past dean of the Nassau Academy of Law, and frequently lectures to lawyers on ethics and avoiding problems with clients, and to the public on how to choose and use lawyers. This is Law You Should Know on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Our guest today is Dr. Andy Hahn, and he's a clinical psychologist who works with lawyers and others. And today we're going to focus on lawyers and depression. And of course, depression affects many people, and especially as we emerge from COVID. Andy, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Thank you so much, Ken, and it's a pleasure being here. And I have a soft spot for lawyers because my father was one.
And I know that you help lawyers and others through therapy and online training and also just coaching. And we're just interested in how you can be of help to lawyers and our listeners in dealing with these challenging topics. Let's start out by how you, as a psychologist involved with the different programs you offer, how do you help lawyers and others?
I will tell you very simply. I think people suffer for only one reason. There's something that can't be handled. That's it. So I think helping others is helping them master what can't be sort of taken in stride. And it's very simple to say how to do it. And if I wanted to give anyone in your audience one message, it's going to be the next thing I say. Whenever there's something that you're suffering about, and suffering is you're anxious, you're depressed, you're judgmental, whatever it is about something, in that moment, a discomfort is born. Whenever there's something that can't be taken in stride, a discomfort is born. And we start living out over and over and over again echoes of the moment the discomfort is born. And what I invite people to do, instead of talking about their problems, which I find doesn't get them very far, typically, is if they can choose to become the discomfort in the same way that an actor would choose to become a role in a movie or a play, suddenly they're no longer unconsciously identified with the one who has the problem. They are with the one who has the problem, but the one they really become then is the one experiencing the one who has the problem. It makes it so that they're removed from it. They're no longer identified with it. Instead, they're the one who says, I'm here with you, and I'm bearing witness to you, and I'm holding you, and I'm accepting you, and I'm not you. So what happens is you become mindful of the problem and you say, it's something that I'm having, but it isn't who I am. And then you remember what was sort of split off and dismembered, and the problem just goes away. Like, I don't care what it is, it just goes away.
So you're helping them to rebuild their mindset, their view of themselves and the outside world.
Yes, it changes the whole mindset because you go from being identified with something limited, which by definition will limit your mindset, to something that is inclusive, which doesn't limit your mindset. And that's how I work with people.
And on the flip side, people come to lawyers and may view their problems as overwhelming, and the lawyer with their education and training and counseling skills helps to lead them to a better place, either make the problem go away or help them go around the problem and overcome it.
Very, very similar. Yes. As soon as someone isn't overwhelmed by their problem, like they are their problem, but they just say, I have a problem, they can step back and they can look at it with their lawyer together. And suddenly they have a whole different perspective because they're looking at the problem. They're not identified with it. And that's what I would say to any lawyer, if they can get their client to do that, they're going to be way better off.
And just focus on your work. Why might lawyers or others be especially depressed in these current times, having been through COVID and our world having changed, etc.?
There's two reasons, basically. One is they get overwhelmed by the current circumstance, and it just is too much. And the stress becomes too much, and they just can't handle that amount of anxiety. So they then lose perspective and they start to say, oh my God, I'm stressed, as opposed to I'm having stress. What can I do about it? And that, if in a nutshell, is why people are having tremendous problems right now. I mean, and it plays out in 1,500 different ways. They were at home with their kids and they weren't before. So suddenly it's like, oh my God, I don't know. I mean, I could handle these people, a few hours a day, but now we're with them 24/7 and it's just too much. And they lose their perspective. Or if they're lonely, right, and they're a lawyer living alone, suddenly they've lost their social connections. They've lost a whole variety of things, and they can't handle that amount of loneliness or aloneness or whatever it's going to be. And, well, I would say those are the two things that have really come up around the pandemic.
And in terms of loneliness, is it important for lawyers or others to reach out to colleagues? Should people reach out to others, especially as we're emerging from COVID? Some people returning to the office on a limited basis. Is it okay to someone? Are you okay? Have you managed financially, health-wise? Have you landed okay? Do you need help or support with anything?
Well, you're obviously a very wise psychologist as well as a lawyer. I would say the biggest epidemic right now in our country is loneliness. And I would say it really hits professionals very, very hard. And the reason for that is they don't have people they talk with. They talk with them about torts, or they talk with them about their clients, or they talk with them about anything except themselves. So the profundity of the amount of people who feel like they're all alone with their problems and they don't know how to handle it and they don't reach out is truly a bigger epidemic, you could say, by far than COVID ever was. And it's killing people, and it's killing a lot of lawyers.
So it's important for lawyers or others when you talk to your neighbors, your colleagues, even perhaps a stranger, give them a chance to relate to you how they're doing, and maybe you can just offer some support or guidance, or just be a good listener.
I would say if you just ask someone, a friend, what's this been like for you? Just like you asked me. And I really would like to know. And I'm not going to give you any advice. I mean, the problems for lawyers like psychologists is we want to give advice and tell people what they should do when we don't know anything about it, because it's their lives. They're the experts in their own lives. What people desperately need is someone who says, I want to know what it was like for you. I can only imagine what it was like for you. I can only imagine if you went through certain things, I'll let it touch my heart and I'm going to sit here with you. And of course, those of us who are experts think that our job is to figure out what they should do and tell them what to do, at which point they just get more depressed and more lonely because they say, now I've got a problem, which is, I'm feeling overwhelmed at anything, and now I can't follow the advice, and now I feel even worse.
So just giving them, let their voice be heard. And letting your voice be heard, that is a good start. And that can be helpful to some people in some situations.
Profoundly helpful. One person who says, I care about you enough to want to really know what it was like for you. And if you give them a real authentic answer, not, oh, I'm fine, or if someone says, how are you? And you say, I'm fine. That's not it. But if I say to you, like, what's it really been like for you, Ken? And you say, are you really interested? And I say, I really am, yeah.
So if they say, I am fine, it's good to ask that follow-up question. What has it been for you? How did you, how did you get through all this?
Or not get through all of it.
Or not get through all of it. Go beyond the yes or the I'm okay.
Yeah, I mean, because you say, how'd you get through it? That assumes they got through it. They may not have gotten through it, right? But if you just...
So how are you managing? How's it going?
Yeah. How's it going? Or what's it been like for you? The more open-ended you are, because that gives people permission to say, it's been really hard. And then you say, tell me more.
And this is a very important question for lawyers to ask clients in general, and bringing in their counseling function, because whatever the legal issue is, it comes from a place that might have gotten aggravated or exacerbated by COVID, and this is it's helping build a bond and communication between the client and the lawyer.
Totally, I say that goes beyond COVID. If you are with your client and you say every client is going to be different, so even if they have one problem, right? They may all have the same seeming problem, but it's going to be different for each of them. And if you ask them as the lawyer, because you're really the only game in town for many of these people. And if you say, we're not going to just focus on your problem, We're going to focus on the you that's having the problem, and we're not going to focus on you, you are the problem, right? Or we're just going to focus on your problem. But we focus on you having a problem. You watch as a lawyer, your work will get better. I guarantee it. And if you can really see what's motivating somebody, because people are motivated by different things, if you just ask that one question, like what's really important to you when you listen around whatever they come in with you with, you'll find that they're going to tell you different things every time if you don't make any, you don't make any assumptions. And
it's going to help you have a better relationship with your clients, and it may lead to you providing other legal services for them because they feel they can be open and honest with you and that you're a problem solver and a problem preventer. I want to remind our listeners that we're talking with Dr. Andy Hahn. He's a licensed clinical psychologist, and we're talking about lawyers and others dealing with depression, especially after COVID. His organization and he provide online therapy, training, and coaching to lawyers and others, and he has plenty of information about all these things on his website, and we'll find that out in a few minutes. If you've missed any portion of this program or you want to tell someone else about it, just go to the podcast at nccradio.org. And again, you're listening to Law You Should Know here on 90.3, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. And now, Andy, one of the important concepts that you help and use to work with people is mindfulness. Can you just explain that?
Sure. I'll give you classic mindfulness, and then I'll give you mindfulness that's going to be particularly helpful to your lawyers and everyone who's working with it. Mindfulness is just awareness. That's all it is. And most mindfulness that people talk about is mindfulness of the breath, right? So if you're feeling anxious and all you did was say, I'm going to follow my breath and take a few deep breaths and be aware that I'm breathing into my diaphragm. On the in-breath, you're going to feel better because you'll feel more alive. And on the out-breath, you're going to feel more relaxed and you'll be able to rest into something and you won't identify with the problem as much anymore. But I'm going to tell you how you best can use mindfulness if you are having some kind of suffering, some kind of anxiety, some kind of depression, some mindset problem, anything. The best way then to be mindful is to, in a sense, make the problem a living being of its own that you're going to be in a relationship with. And the best way to do that when you're anxious or when you're depressed, if you're depressed and I said, Ken, when you're depressed, what do you feel in your body? And you say, my stomach's heavy. Then I'm going to say something very funny to you, which is stomach heavy, my dear lawyer friend, is going to be your new client. And its name is stomach, is heavy stomach. And what you're going to do is you're going to mindfully bring all of your attention to the one who really has the problem. We know that you're not depressed, Ken, at that case, because I could say, Ken, your little toe is just fine. So it can't be you. Your little toe is not unhappy at all. But someone whose name is heavy stomach is very unhappy. And what you're going to do is you're going to choose to become aware of heavy stomach and bring all your attention there and say, heavy stomach, what have you come to share with me about depression? And I guarantee you, if you just do that, and when you do that, you listen, even speak out loud, whatever comes to you, even if it makes no sense, you might say, oh my gosh, I'm realizing, I'm 7 years old and like I was really, really happy because I was really creative. And my father said, stop doing that. Like, why are you wasting your time with that stuff? You should be studying, right? And you went off and became a lawyer and studied and studied and studied. But you say, for some reason, I'm depressed. And what it really is some 7-year-old you who's like being yelled at by his father and saying, stop doing anything creative. And suddenly you're like, say, anytime I have a creative idea at law, I feel sick. And it never even occurred to you that you got depressed every time you had a creative idea. So you say, I'm bored. I feel bad. I feel like I'm working too hard. And it's really a 7-year-old. And his name was Heavy Stomach.
Okay. So, we have a limited amount of time in this show, but I think your point is that everyone has different demons and baggage.
Right.
And they're surfacing at various times when we're struggling with things. And you can help people to explore that and overcome
And they can do it for themselves, Ken. That's the key.
Okay.
Because they could find the demon and then they could say, I'm going to listen to you. Just like you did with your friend, you're going to listen to the the person inside your body whose name is heavy stomach or headache or whatever it is. And the second you do that, you're going to do the same thing for them that you would for your friend, and you're going to really listen to them.
So just
And
listening and
yourself.
talking are very good skills. It's a way you can help your family members, your colleagues, and your clients.
Right. And the mindfulness part of it, Ken, is to say, I'm having a problem, but it isn't who I am. All I do with people is I say, let's name the problem as something that you can be mindful about, which is a physical sensation, because there are two things you can be mindful about, really. One is the breath and one is your body. That's about it.
And in terms of mindfulness, just taking those deep breaths will help them physically and relaxation-wise and mentally. Just taking a little breath, just pausing, just taking some time for themselves. That will help to get them through a day, through a challenging situation.
Yes, that's what that kind of mindfulness does. It kind of gets you through. It doesn't solve your problem. You'd have to find the one who has the problem to solve it and be mindful with the one who has the problem. But just taking a breath gives you some perspective right away. It makes it so you can stand back.
Is there anything else you wanted to say about, that depression and lawyers and depression, what causes it, or any other ways to move beyond it?
What you need to know with depression is it's going to be one of two things. Depression is either going to be a way you protect yourself from something that's too painful, like a drug. It's sort of in that way like drinking, okay? There's something too painful, and what is depression? It's really, I'm not going to feel. So if someone does something to you that is just too, it makes you too upset, it makes you too overwhelmed, it makes you whatever it is, or if something happens and you can't handle it, people get depressed because it numbs you. It's really a good choice. But the problem is you forget you're making a choice, and then whenever anything looks like the original situation, you get depressed again. That's the first way you get depressed. So it's really like a protector that's like you called in without being aware of it, and then you think the depression is the problem, where really it's a solution to a worse problem. And if you can find it and say, what are you protecting me from? It will literally tell you, and you won't be as depressed.
And you can help someone explore those issues.
Totally. And I've seen results. I've seen major depressions go away in literally 20 minutes when they've been unresponsive to years of treatment. I can tell you story after story about that. Some with lawyers.
And anxiety is a different component of that. People may be anxious about getting work done, about winning a case, about meeting goals, about being productive.
Right.
Is that separate from depression, or sometimes they go hand in hand?
They can go hand in hand, but they're separate. There's two kinds of anxiety, and you have to be able to distinguish them. One is developmental. You're a lawyer, and you're going to court for the first time, you're feeling anxious. All right? No problem. You just have to talk to yourself and say, it makes sense that I'd be anxious. Because it's like riding a bicycle for the first time, you'd say, it's not a problem, but I'm going to have to face my anxiety and still take a leap. And then you do, and it's not a problem anymore. The second kind of anxiety is what I described to you before. Something happens and it triggers something where you're unresourced, like from your childhood. So you're going into a court for the first time, and the first time you went to first grade, somebody bullied you. And suddenly you go into court and you can't handle anybody, and it looks like all the witnesses are bullying you. And it's really because it's a 6-year-old you in first grade who's anxious because he was bullied there the first day.
And it may be a trigger. I mean, that judge may bully you, that colleague, the client may bully you. So that can bring all that back home. And unfortunately, it's not. It shouldn't exist. And some judges and lawyers control it better than others. But it does go on, that bullying. And sometimes that, it's used as a tactic.
Of course. And what you want to get to is you want to be fully resourced. So let's suppose you start being aware that you can't, you're with one judge and you always lose. And you start to say, well, what is it about that judge? And you say, I feel bullied by him and I'm suddenly frozen like a deer in headlights. Now, if you for 1 second could forget the judge, right, and say, what happens inside of me when I feel frozen, you'll have a sensation. If you bring your attention to it and say, who are you? That is really up there in front of the judge right now, and suddenly you start to cry without being aware of why. And your wife says, I never saw him cry. And it's like you're saying, oh my God, I'm in first grade and I'm going into that classroom and there's a big kid there and he's bullying. Oh, I'm not going to let, Stevie win, and the heck with that judge. I'm not going to let him be Stevie and bully me all over again. And you watch what happens the next day you go into the judge's court. You won't be bullied.
And sometimes you have to appropriately stand up for yourself, to the judge, to the other attorney, to the client, and just remind them in a thoughtful manner that this behavior is not appropriate and it shouldn't be allowed. And there may be consequences.
Because, Ken, you're very you'd be a totally resource person there and say, you know what? You're not going to treat me this way. Just because you have the power, right, doesn't mean you can treat me with disrespect.
Well, it also means it's an abuse of their power. They're going beyond their power. And again, they may use it for tactical advantage, and it's not really appropriate under the code of ethics or under judicial decorum.
As you say, they do it anyway, Ken, so that's why you have to be prepared.
Exactly, and stand up for it appropriately. And maybe your colleagues will even help you do that. I just want to remind our listeners, we're talking with Andrew Hahn. He's a licensed clinical psychologist. He provides therapy and training and coaching to lawyers and others in dealing with all these stressful life stress issues and depression and being a fuller self, getting rid of these demons so you can be more productive in your profession and in life. Andy, just tell us about your website and what information is on it and some of the programs you offer.
Our website, it's called lifecenteredtherapy.com, and we do a particular kind of work which is called life-centered therapy. And I was the developer of that work, and we've trained over 1,000 people all over the world, and we have a bunch of certified practitioners, and they all work remotely, so you can be in Long Island, even though we don't have anyone we've trained in Long Island. You can find people sort of wherever you like. So that's the first thing. Then we do coaching. We do online coaching, plus we have online programs that you can just get that teach you about how to handle your anxiety, for example, that are quite inexpensive. And then if you want to then focus on anxiety and you want to get more, we also have programs where you can watch videos, but also get live coaching. And we have a book which anybody can read. It's a really fun book. It's called The 1 Hour Miracle, and the information about that's on our website.
And briefly, what do you cover in that book? How can that book be of help to lawyers and others?
We cover how it is that you can do your own sort of guide your own self-healing, and we tell you the whole sort of whole framework for understanding why people get depressed or anxious or whatever, and then how to master it. And we take you through how to do it. And then we tell you every kind of variation you can imagine that you might not have thought of, like, I was bullied or I was betrayed. And it may never have occurred to you that your depression was that, or it may never have occurred to you that your depression was the way that you protected yourself from overwhelming feelings. And we take you through all of that, and we show you how to do it. And we show you, if you don't want to do it for yourself, you'll have this really great, simple background, and it's a really fun book to read. And you can do it for yourself, but you also then would have a really good background to go for therapy. That's what the book is.
And do people sometimes fall under the notion that it's only them, that everyone else is doing super well? Their colleagues, their friends, the famous people they see on the shows on TV and on the screen and all the magazines.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's no secret that everyone has their challenges, the rich and the famous and the smart and the not as smart.
Everyone has their challenges, and the people who are actually the strongest are the ones who say, you want to know something? I'm not going to go around like living an image, and I'm going to be authentic. And it's amazing when you start getting authentic. Watch what happens to your law practice. You'll think you'll be seen as weaker. People will see you as stronger because they'll see you as a human being who's an amazing expert, but, is authentic.
And everyone out there, people could be carrying baggage that's damaging them, that's holding them back, that becomes an increasing burden to lift and to carry with them. And through some of the ideas that you mentioned, you can relieve that burden from them.
I can totally do that. The people I've trained can do it. And in a simple way, we can show you how you can do it for yourself, which is really good because it's really empowering.
And you mentioned earlier that people can also help other people, their colleagues, friends, maybe even a stranger, by being a good listener and, giving them a little courage and confidence to go on.
If all you did was say, I really want to know what it's like for you, and I really care, and I'm going to try to imagine what it was like for you and not give you advice, because most people don't need advice. They need someone who says, I'm going to try to understand what it's like for you. The only other thing I'd say is, if you have no one around to listen to yourself. The best gift you can give yourself is to say, I'm going to find the part of me that's feeling anxious, and I'm going to give it what no one else ever did. I'm going to listen to my anxiety. I'm going to let it have a voice, and I'm going to say, you're okay. And it's amazing what that does for people. They accept themselves.
And does it help more if people talk to someone, even if it's not face-to-face? Maybe they live far away, to reconnect with someone, just to do it, let's say, over the phone or something like that. It gives them an opportunity to open up, maybe as opposed more than an email or being on Facebook.
Totally. We are so much not talking with each other. It really makes me want to cry how much we're not talking with each other. So we do that. We post things on Facebook, or we send emails, or we do whatever. And, it looks like we're connected, but we're not. We're a society of disconnects. And
that word is, and it's important that people have a connection to others, to their job, their things they enjoy, whether it's a walk or doing charity or helping someone. People need that connection with their coworkers as well.
If you can connect with nature, and you can connect with your coworkers, and you can connect with your family, and you connect with a community and some friends, you're going to be happy.
And sometimes volunteering, doing something to help others, will help provide some kind of connection and support as well.
The best thing you can do to have a connection is to be, without denying yourself, because there are some people, all they do is they become over-responsible. They take on everybody's burdens. But if you can focus on some kind of service, and it's something that really, makes you feel alive and good, the best way to get out of yourself is to be there and be of service to someone else.
And there are all kinds of opportunities to work for charities. Bar associations and lawyer groups have all kinds of opportunities to do pro bono. It will help you meet people, and will help you do good and help people as well. Andy, just give us your website again.
Life, Life, centered, CENTERED, therapy.com.
And again, you have a lot of low-cost and helpful information there.
A lot of free information there, too.
And most bar associations have lawyer in need programs. They can give free support services to lawyers. They have groups that deal with supporting lawyers who may be and feel in mental or physical jeopardy. Just ask any bar association for some of those support services, and perhaps
do the same
firm.
thing.
Yes.
And we have students who are amazing, but they want to practice. But they're extraordinary, and they're really great therapists, and they'll see people for very, very little.
Okay, I'd like to thank our guest, Dr. Andy Hahn, and just remind everyone you've been listening to Law You Should Know on WHPC 90.3. If you missed any portion of the podcast, just go to nccradio.org, and please join us next week at this same time on WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York.